Have attempted. That's
All right, well, welcome to our secure stage strategy Q&A. Tim, you've got the first question. You want to vocalize it for us?
Absolutely. So in regards to event correlation for vulnerability findings, I know a few releases ago we gave the ability to add vulnerabilities. I also know that the plan team or the manage team are working on this work items construct that will be superseding epics and issues and tasks. Will the vulnerabilities also adopt that work items capability? And the reason I'm asking is I know issues have the ability to have like dependencies between one another. And I didn't know if work items were to envelop vulnerabilities, if the ability to stitch together interdependencies between vulnerabilities would also be something that would be available.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can take at least a pass of this. Anybody else who has comments, please feel free to add in. But as far as I know, I don't think we have any near-term plans to work on this. Not that that's not a valuable feature, it's just in comparison to the other items that we have, it seems like a lot of the other features that we have address more critical needs for customers. The one exception that I'll note here is our plans for continuous container and dependency scanning. So one benefit of that is that in the past you would run container scanning, and if you had any application vulnerabilities inside of that container image, those would be duplicated with your vulnerability results from dependency scanning typically. And so the new approach that we're taking with continuous scanning solves for that, because instead we're just collecting an SBOM from both, and we're deduplicating to just get the single list of dependencies, and then we scan that list of dependencies for vulnerabilities. And so that would eliminate, those duplicates between our container and dependency scanners.
Cool. So so work items and vulnerabilities will remain completely independent from one another.
At least in the next 6 to 12 months, we don't have anything on our roadmap there. Now in the long term, absolutely, I think that's an area that we'll want to take a closer look at, but we don't have anything in the immediate future.
Thanks. I'll pass it off to Joe to verbalize his question.
I guess one question real quick, Sam. Would that be a question worth bringing to the govern meeting that's right after this one for if Alana's going to be there?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think she'll have much of a different answer, but it might be worth just getting her take and seeing if she has any other thoughts there for sure.
My question here might not be as much related to the video, but we have a few security marketing events that are coming up and the submissions are due. Given that we have some of the field crew in here, it might be a good time to talk on what we might want to show off at AWS Reinforce and Black Hat or any others. But figured we could maybe dump some ideas in here. Add a few, including API security with DAST, in particular with Lambdas, but would be curious of others and what we can maybe highlight or show off.
That's hard to say. What are your top features, Hillary? Continuous scanning, I think, is a big one. Some of the govern stage features are really good ones to highlight. Like we have upcoming plans for group level dependency list. None of these are like earth-shatteringly new in the broader market, but they're new for GitLab. And in terms of ease of use and shifting security left, because we are GitLab and we are an SCA and CI tool, as we add these features in, it makes it really easy to have them on by default for all of your projects. So I think you could almost take just about any feature that we've got on our roadmap, and even if it's not something completely new to the broader market, the fact that you can suddenly have that capability for every single one of your development projects is a really big deal. But yeah, I feel like continuous vulnerability scanning is a really big flagship feature. Some of the features we just released around license compliance are a pretty big deal as well. Like we just revamped not only our license scanner, but also added license approval policies. So we're letting you manage, more than just security. I think that could be a talk, like going beyond security into license compliance, if we're focusing on past features. And then coming up in the future, I think, you could talk about just security and compliance in general, perhaps. Might make another good talk. We have, I know I'm shifting the focus over to govern because that's my stage, so my mind's there a little bit more, but we have a lot of big features coming out related to locking down the governance and compliance of GitLab across the board, with like a new compliance adherence report page and more strict controls for actually enforcing some of the policies that we have. So I don't know, I'm just batting out a few ideas off of mind. I'm not sure if Connor, what would be top of mind for static analysis, perhaps. I don't want to only plug govern ideas here.
Yeah, great question. So I think depending on the show and the audience, often you're dealing with people who go from what is a GitLab to like, I've used Ultimate before, or I use Ultimate today. And the answer is always going to be different for those people. For the people that are maybe less familiar or haven't used Ultimate before, I think it's really hitting the platform message that it's we're trying to help you collaborate to actually resolve the security problems you have, and that having all your things in one platform really is a huge benefit. If they're more familiar with the product, the bigger recent changes can be good to sort of refresh them, especially if they maybe evaluated Ultimate a long time ago. I guess important things there. I'm kind of struggling for the list, but we've pretty significantly improved SaaS workflows, coming soon, inline findings in the inline changes tab and the MR, like that type of thing, about just bringing the platform together. Secret detection auto response is pretty neat. People tend to grok that pretty nicely too. That, hey, if I leak a secret, I want you to find it and get rid of it right away. The caveat is that it's only with a couple partners and with GitLab itself, but yeah, Derek, I think you unmuted. I don't know if you had other thoughts to mention. Browser-based tasks, man, we should totally talk about that. That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do it.
browser-based tasks, I think, would be an interesting one to talk about a little bit, just because historically it's very difficult to scan single-page applications or like modern JavaScript frameworks with Dast. It just doesn't work very well. And with our browser-based analyzer, we're trying to solve it, and we're doing much better than anything else that I've seen out on the market right now. So, that could be an interesting one to talk about. I do like the API security idea as well, because that's a big area that is being missed in a lot of companies that I've looked at, customers that I've talked to. They just don't really do anything with their APIs, and it's a big risk that they're taking there.
I think also maybe the message about like what should you say at a trade show. Brian Mason, Fern, like folks will be the best people to sort of give the authoritative answer on the message you want at a particular show. So just to kind of mention that, they're both super engaged in what we've been doing lately, and I wouldn't want to kind of freelance about the show message.
Awesome. Thank you all. On to you, Jin.
I've got a big batch of them. Sorry for the weird formatting, by the way. I put them into Slack as I watch the video. So I'll run through mine real quick. They're mostly tactical. I saw that we are de-emphasizing code climate as our code quality engine, which I give a big thumbs up. I've seen some limitations in it, especially with some outside of its core languages. It's just not as great as I would hope, right? And I think the video said something about I forgot the verbiage, but to my brain, it suggested we will encourage customers to use third-party code quality engines. Is that an accurate assumption, or did I mishear?
So generally, yes. The difference maybe being that a code quality engine often queues a different kind of thing than like a linter. So a lot of what people are getting from a code climate is not the type of thing that you actually get if you buy a code quality product. What you're getting is linting. You're getting ESLint running on your code. You're getting Robocop. You're getting all these things that, if you're a competent development team that wants to use any kind of linting, you already have an ESLint job. So we're really trying to figure out how to make it easy to get that into the code quality widget. If you're using ESLint, you probably have a config file already. You have your own opinions on which version of it to use. You're not going to want it to run Docker and Docker. You should just take the report from ESLint. Sort of mapping the existing developer workflow that we validated from UX research to what the tool is actually doing. If you get more toward like what's a quality engine, finding potential code smells and things, that gets a little bit more toward like a sonar or something like that. That's a place where we candidly won't be able to invest much right now. There are some interesting approaches that could pay off, but that area just has less definition. We're really trying to get past the code climate blocks adoption issue by at least hitting kind of parity with what it's doing as a first step.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And I do hear more requests around things like we want to understand our McCabe cyclomatic complexity, as opposed to we want to lint for a number of indents when defining methods, right? And I'm a big fan of if a feature is not going to be amazing, it's actually probably beneficial to not have it there. So actually that's really good to hear. The other one, Sam's already answered, but I'll verbalize here. I saw some of the, what I'll call continuous scan or passive scan, I guess is what I think of it, things that don't happen in a pipeline. Container registry, secrets. We are a repository. I think that's been something that would be fairly natural for us for a long time. I love seeing it in there. And my question was, will it be for SaaS first or self-managed first? And Sam has answered that it will be for SaaS first, and we'll want to do some thorough testing around performance. So I'll consider that one addressed.
Yeah, so just to clarify, we're trying to release it for both at the same time. Like that's our current default plan. We would only deviate from that if there was a good reason. So
okay.
Hopefully it won't be SAST first, right? If everything goes to plan, then it'll go out for both at the same time.
Okay, no worries. I would totally understand it if it were SaaS first. I think our customers are beginning to have a natural expectation of that because we manage all the moving parts. So let's see, I had two more, I promise that's it. I saw that we are consolidating the many SaaS scanners basically on the SEMGREP, right? And it's a very corner case, but it does come up from time to time. So what I was thinking is there can be cases where there's like, Python commonly. It's a build driver, it's not actually part of the application code base, and it will cause the static analyzer for Python. Obviously wouldn't cause a dependency scanner because there's no package manager. Will the auto detection be something that's perhaps a small, story that's part of a larger epic? Just because I can imagine if everything's consolidated in a SEMGREP, it may be alarming to some users to see like, oh, the Python scanner didn't complete or errored out or whatever. Does that question make sense? I tried to word it in a linear fashion. Not sure if I did.
Yeah, maybe I'll restate it and you can, before I answer, which is sort of like there's often non-production code that people don't really care about. And I think you're mentioning jobs running, but maybe the issue is also if there's a security finding in there, is it worth paying attention to? Am I on the target? Or?
It was actually a little more fundamental. It's forget about the fact of whether there's a security finding or not. Let's just say that for whatever reason, there's a security finding, or there are no security findings, but there's something about that file that causes the scanner to exit incorrectly and appear to be an error, right? Anything along that spectrum.
Some kind of error in the operation of the scan because of that non-production code.
Yeah.
Okay. So on non-production code more broadly, I think we need to do a better job of being able to kind of split that out. And you can use SAS excluded paths that sort of ignore certain directories if you want to, or certain glob patterns. But that's not a place that we're super strong in trying to differentiate between, which the code that's in your repo, we kind of treat it all as the code you want to scan. So we need to think about how to improve that workflow. But if you get more toward errors in the scans, this is a surprisingly thorny issue because of the way that reports are processed. We assume that every report is complete. So like when you, every scan has to be sort of a scan of the whole repo. So then if you have errors, like, well, if you had a full scan and then an error scan and then a finding isn't there anymore, is it resolved? If you didn't have the error, like how should you handle that? That's a thing that my group's actually talked about as recently as last week, about how it's sort of a incremental scans and like a scan with an error kind of become kind of the same type of problem. So I guess I don't have an answer for exactly how to do that, but we're trying to figure out how we can handle a scan that's 99% complete, but has an error because of a Python file or whatever, without having confusing behavior through the rest of the system.
That's fair.
Okay.
There's also a silent philosophical debate, which I didn't bring to this call. Even if it's just a build driver or a test suite, does that represent exposure to vulnerabilities, right? So let's not get into that. I'll bring that up if it becomes a hotter topic. And then the final one, I think Derek's already got the answer, but API fuzzing, one of the most common, I wouldn't say objections, but it's kind of like the, oh, wait, moment with prospects that I deal with is, hey, we really want that, but we don't have a starting point, right? We need the test suite. We don't know how to generate it. This is brand new to us, but it's of interest. And I heard, I watched this last night at 2 a.m. It's that we will basically do some interrogation, my words, not the ones used in the video, and figure out the specification to generate an open API format. And my mind was like, does that mean we're going to generate this great set of seeds and corpus for customers to use? And I guess, Derek, I'll let you verbalize your answer to me there.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you look at the idea of a seed. With API fuzzing, we don't really use the corpus the same way, or seed the same way that you would in coverage guided fuzzing. So the open API spec that we'll be generating is really just like the guide for the scan. So it's telling you what the API calls are, what it's expecting, all that kind of stuff. So it is in some sense the corpus or the seed, but also it's a little bit different. We don't really call it that in terms of documentation and how we present it to customers. So it's really more of like the guide for the scan. Make sure that we call all the right API calls and we're not missing anything, since that's kind of been a huge blocker for anybody trying to get into API scanning. It's surprising how many companies don't have any type of spec or anything for their APIs.
It is a little bit scary, and it's almost like when they face this challenge of, hey, we need to write our own test, they just skip it. I'm like, oh, that really scares the what out of me. But okay, cool, understood. Thank you very much, and that's it for me.
I do want to note, I have yet to find a API fuzzing example that is passing right now in the security products demos.
Okay,
we can totally take that offline, but just a note. But I will ask the next question. Slide 17, I was curious about updated timelines for the 5 databases. I know there's an Epic, and sometimes it's a little bit unclear on whether or not the databases or data is officially being used within that database and everything's been created. And I didn't know if the definition of done included API access to some of that data.
Yeah, the definition of done. So I guess it depends on what APIs what you're wanting to do with the APIs. If you're just wanting to like read vulnerability information, obviously we already have APIs that you can call to get the list of vulnerabilities. Same thing with licenses. Like if you want to get the license information, you can click the export button on the dependency list page, and that'll give you a JSON export of all of your dependencies with their licenses and their vulnerabilities. I'm not positive, but I think that one is backed by an API that you can call as well. Adding and changing data is a little bit more complicated because we are syncing the advisory database and the license database from something that GitLab manages. And so if we start letting customers add or edit that data, then there start to be questions of like, which one overrides which one, and how do we deal with conflicts? Do we share that data across all customers? Do we partition it just for that one customer? Anyway, so our solutions there might be a little bit more nuanced than just API access if they do want to, add their own advisories or add their own license data. That is something that we've considered, and I think I linked to the correct issue for that, but it's more likely that we would have some sort of mechanism where they could report up licenses through a CI pipeline. And currently our proposal is to ingest those, add it into essentially a sandboxed or a customer only, license database that is tracked separately from the main advisory database. And then, their results would reflect that data that they've added in manually. So I don't know, that we're still working through the technical implementation details. The end solution might be different, but there are more considerations than just opening up APIs, because if we let anybody read or write, it would actually affect all of our customers right now.
Yeah,
and it would conflict with our own data.
That's fair. Yeah, I know that sometimes the licenses aren't being detected and it's just showing up as unknown. And I didn't know if that would be a potential stopgap for some customers of like, I know what license it is, I just want to manually detect it or manually overwrite it for now until GitLab can get this resolved. But also, yeah, I love the idea of being the place that customers could declare their internal advisories. And then all packages that, or, if they have a shared library, all of their applications that rely on that internal third-party library could then get detected or flagged as having a vulnerability tied to it. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And those unknowns, we actually, for most languages, we've seen huge improvements in reducing the number of unknowns when in comparison to the previous one. For the other ones that are out there, we've got open issues that are actually being worked on right now to help improve those rates. So, we're trying to address those in the core database because that's going to help everybody rather than having each customer do their own workarounds as much as possible.
Makes sense. Thanks. I guess, Connor, did you want to?
No, that's we only have 3 minutes, so I figured you and Manjit should finish.
Manjit, it's off to you.
Yeah, my question is mostly around analytics or insight into all the findings which we have with respect to vulnerabilities. Some of the questions customer or prospects are asking is like, hey, what are the top projects which has the secrets? Like, I don't want to go and start scanning 400 projects and looking for this information. So give me some kind of analytical reporting kind of dashboard, which can help us start planning things. So I just brought like a few examples out there. Hey, when was the vulnerability first detected, a particular vulnerability, and how often it was detected, how long it has been not addressed. Those kind of things will help them operationalize and go back and start working on it. So mostly around reporting, analytics, insights, So I don't see anything in the slide deck with respect to that.
Yeah, others might have something to say about this as well, but I'll just touch on this. I think this is something that's come up increasingly frequently recently. I don't know if you all would agree with that, but I think that this is something that's been raised probably, I don't know, maybe up to as many as 10 times in the last quarter, for me at least. So I think it's something that probably we're gonna have to address at some point this year, but we don't currently have any plan to do so. So, but I think given the amount of interest, this is something that's sort of on my list of things to look at where we can stop this, and if we can maybe take advantage of what I'll call synergies with other teams that I have purview over to sort of work together to provide some visibility into some of those metrics. So looking into it is the short answer there. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add here.
Sure, thank you.
Cool. Well, that looks like that's the end of the list. So thanks, folks, for hopping on and engaging. The questions were great. We'll see you next time.